Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by Locker. You can sign up with Locker now with the promo code WIRE, W-I-R-E. Receive a $50 deposit match. I'm Jim Coventry. You can find me at Jim Coventry NFL. This show will include the biggest takeaways from the Week 7 action. All right, starting out, instant reaction. Number one, the Chiefs move to 6-0. Yes, they played the 49ers. Rough game. I just started out with this. Deebo Samuel had an illness coming into the game, barely played. I think I saw him on the field a little bit, and I saw him with an oxygen tank. He was done. We did get 6 targets out of Brandon Ayuk. He injures his knee. He's gone this one. So that really made this game a little different. But realistically, let's go to the Chiefs. The Chiefs, let's start there. We'll come back to the Niners. So the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, listen to the stat line. 16 of 27, 150 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. He does run for 39 and a touchdown. Again, Patrick Mahomes almost cannot be started in single quarterback leagues. This team is all about running the football, loading up with heavy personnel. I'll talk about that in a second, and pummeling their opponent, letting their very good, maybe great, maybe elite defense with a phenomenal coach let their defense win, let their running game win. We talked about this. The 49ers, we had to face a defense that was going to come in with 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets. And I got to look back in the tape. I don't know if they used 4 tight end sets in this game or not, like they did against New Orleans, but it was insane. So they win 28-18. But basically, here's the problem that defense are going to have stopping this running attack. First of all, the interior trio of pass blockers for the Chiefs are outstanding. That's their strength of their run game, is the interior, the center and the 2 guards. But then you bring these tight ends in, and the defense has to bring in bodies to match it. They got to go in their base defense. They may even put an extra body in the box. But here's the problem. The players you're bringing in, they're designed for the passing game era. And that means they're lighter bodies than ever. These aren't the bodies of 10 years ago where you had heavier bodies. They can't handle in this type of heavy run environment. And so you see Kareem Hunt on the couch. He was washed last year. First game he plays the Chargers, 14 for 69, gets a couple catches, so he gets 85 yards in that first game. Only played 45% of the snaps. Then he plays New Orleans, 27 carries for $1.02 and a touchdown. Again, yards per carry, no great shakes, but you're getting volume. You're getting goal line work. And then this game of the 49ers, again, yards per carry, not a big deal. 22 for 78, doesn't sniff 4 yards per carry, but 2 touchdowns. So for fantasy, he gets 2 catches for 8 yards. He gets you over 20 points. That's 2 weeks in a row. He's bordering with 20 fantasy points. So running back 1 because volume is king in fantasy football. And, Samaje Perine gets a couple carries and a catch. Carson Steele gets, his 5 or 6 carries a week. Doesn't do much with those. But that's what this game is right now. And even Travis Kelce was like not needed. 5 targets, 4 for 17. The only receiver, aside from Perine, the running back, who had 20 yards in this game, Noah Gray, 4 catches, 66 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster leaves with the hamstring injury he came into the game with. Fortunately, I recommended people to bench him this game. I didn't like the matchup. The injury relapse should have been an issue, but this team is only going to pass when they have to. 27 attempts. That's it. But again, it's a thing of beauty. You might hate the Chiefs. You might hate the winning. But realistically, this is just a beautiful show of force. They win in different ways. 6-0. Who knows what they'll be like when they get to the playoffs. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a world where Hollywood Brown returns for the NFL playoffs. I'm not sure. But if they did get him back, that'd be a major boost to the offense. But let's just deal with it. 6-0, great start. The 49ers, look, right now, it's just been a very weird season, right? It's been injuries, untimely injuries. McCaffrey, obviously, that whole offense. It's just, you say you don't pay running backs, but McCaffrey always needed to be paid because he is the ultimate weapon. He's a receiver. He's a running back. He just revolutionizes everything around him, and it allows Shanahan to do so many other things. But Brock Purdy threw a couple bad interceptions in this game. He was probably pressing, he had players out and hurt and probably kind of figured I got to outduel Mahomes, and he was just out of his element. And a couple of those throws, he just didn't read people. Just not good. Purdy, when he faces any normal defense, he's a fine quarterback. When he has his weapons around him too, it certainly helps. Jordan Mason, I did recommend people to consider not starting him against better fantasy options. 14 for 58 yards per carry. We're fine, a little over 4, 2 catches for 11. But if you're in a PPR league, what he get you 9 points? So, that's what you wanted. That's good. And last week, I know he got hurt 28% of the snaps. They can't fault him for that. But even the last game he played full game against Arizona, it was 98 yards and 1 catch. It's fine to get 10 points as long as 10 points is what you're good with. So that's what we're looking at right now. Jordan Mason is like a 10 PPR point per game guy. Maybe there's games if McCaffrey doesn't come back a little longer, maybe he gets an end zone look. Maybe there's a bad opponent and he can steamroll him. But again, the volume isn't through the roof. The last 2 healthy games is 14 carries. It's good, but that's nothing special. So all that said, and I don't know what we're going to do with the Ayuk injury. His knee injury, don't know how significant it is. Debo is sick, so he should be back next week. And Kittle has been rolling. Touchdowns at 2 of the last 3. His yards in last week, 64 or 58, and then a 92 today. So Kittle has just been one of the answers at tight end. He hasn't been the up and down player we've seen. But again, hats off to the Chiefs. Wonderful, wonderful start to the season. The 49ers, they just got to keep their record close enough so when they get McCaffrey back, they can begin to figure some things out. Their defense, a lot of injuries in the infrastructure. They're going to have to get some people back. They just got to make the playoffs and then hope they're healthy enough to make a run. But right now, yeah, it's a little bit troubling for them. All right, let's go to our next instant reaction. Number 2, CJ Stroud struggles in a loss to the Packers. I'll start with the Packers since the Packers won. So the Packers win this game on a last-second field goal. It might have been a couple seconds. I think it was at the gun. I think it was at the gun. 24-22. Now, the Texans had run a long drive to bleed the clock. They couldn't get that one extra first down. They couldn't bleed it all the way down. They left the Packers too much time. Packers got down the field. Packers kicked that leg field goal. Either team could have won this game. Sorry, the Packers. Josh Jacobs, I didn't know this. I heard that the touchdown reception he had, it was his first receiving touchdown of his career. That stunned me because Josh Jacobs, he caught a lot of passes when he was at the Raiders, right? And he had never scored a receiving touchdown. So crazy. But yeah, he gets that first one in, boosted up. Jordan Love, not a good yardage game, 24-33, 220, but he throws 3 touchdowns, a couple picks in there. So, not the best game. Josh Jacobs, a couple big runs in there, 12 for 76, ends up with a solid game. Jacobs has been, he's been better for NFL than for fantasy. He only has 2 games with a touchdown. I get it, but he's been very good for NFL. For what the Packers want to do. Very solid runner, but he hasn't seen that receiving volume. He had 5 catches today, 16 yards. So, but it helped, but it hasn't been consistent. The yardage hasn't been much. So, but look, you're fine with Josh Jacobs. No complaints. You would like more big games out of him, but his floor has been phenomenal. The receivers, that's where the disconnect is. It's like what receivers, are going to go off, and you never know. Dontavian Wicks, he got hurt last week and with the 1 for 9, but then he had the struggles. He had the 2 for 20. He had one big game where he had 13 targets, but he's had drop issues. He had caught about 30% of his targets. Well, again, he catches half of his targets, 3 of 6, but he goes for 48 and a touchdown. So he ends up with a solid fantasy day, but he was probably on a lot of fantasy benches. And then there's Jaden Reed. So when you looked at this game, Houston was down their second quarter, Kamari Lassiter. They were down their free safety, Jimmy Ward. They were down their 2 outside linebackers. And we know the Packers want to attack you like in the middle of the field. They'll also stress your corners, but they really like to get in that middle of the field and test these areas. And I really thought that with that depleted defense, they would come in and just put the hammer on them. And the one player who seemed to be in the greatest spot was Jaden Reed. Nope, 4 targets, 2 catches, 10 yards. Again, it's weird. You just don't understand sometimes. Romeo Doubs, whatever, and I'm not even going to pretend I know. Whatever happened to him and the team a couple weeks ago where he was suspended for that game, he has come back so well. He only had last week 4 targets, but he scored twice. This week, 10 targets. He had as many targets as Wicks and Reed combined. Christian Watson only had 2. But yeah, so 2 weeks in a row, 8 for 94 for Doubs. It's hard to predict it week after week to see that's going to keep going on. But that said, Dobbs is their X receiver. He's the one player that's pretty much on the outside. He's the one with the exact role where you kind of know where he's going to be. And if they continue to utilize him, he has proven to be a good player. And I was wondering going into this year, he's had 2 good years, but is he that classic 3rd-year breakout player? He came in the league, he did good enough this first year, but it's one of those players you could see him growing into his role. We'll see how that works. Christian Watson, again, just, the disappointment. 1 catch for 9 yards, 2 targets. Again, you thought a beatable matchup. I have to rewatch like the all 22 tape, and I've got to see how much he was on Stingley. Because if Stingley was on him quite a bit, then that would be a problem. That could be very problematic, especially when there's other weapons for Love. And then again, Tucker Kraft doesn't get a lot of targets. Last 3 games, 5, 4, and 4. It's not a total we like, but again, 3 for 33 and a touchdown. It was a great touchdown catch back in the end zone. Very nice athletic catch. So again, you start him every week. Top 10 tight end. He's going to have the 2 for 13 like he had last week. That's going to happen. Targets aren't high, but the leverage of the targets often to get some red zone looks. There's some run after catch opportunities. So you play Tucker Kraft and you take the ups and the downs, but he's been a very, very good player. You know that. But now let's go to the Houston side. And those who listen to me, you heard me talk about the concerns of the preseason. I know I went over the top with it, but when they cut their 3 fullbacks, I was very frustrated for them. I said their whole key to success last year was they'd run a fullback on the field. Defenses could go out of there. They'd have to drop an extra defender in the box. It's the same thing the 49ers do, the Ravens do, different offense, but the same concept, and the Dolphins. And all 3 of those teams, and last year, Houston, they were the top 4 teams in the league in average depth of target because that 2 running back look forced defense to bring an extra defender. And I know they brought in Diggs, so they had Diggs, Dell, and Collins. I know Collins is hurt, but I said the problem with this is going to be defense automatically sees, okay, we're putting the shell up now with the 2 high shell. You're getting a Jamar Chase treatment. And by not having a fullback on the field, they no longer enjoy that deep passing. Well, that's the problem. Tank Dell had the good game last week, 0 this week. 0 for 0, 4 targets, nothing. They can't fix this right now. And Stephon Diggs, 5 for 23 on 7 targets. Now, Diggs has been great for fantasy, but he's largely a slot guy. Just plays 77% slot, so he gets good volume there. But Nico Collins is the player if they're going to live in this world with 3 receivers, it's got to be Nico Collins, who's hurt 2 of his 4-week IR stint. They're done. Hopefully he's back after the 4. But you've heard me talk about how he is a cover 2 or a 2 high shell breaker because he doesn't go necessarily over the top of it. He goes over the linebackers and before the safeties, and Stroud is willing to rip the ball in there, and then Collins finds the gaps and gets yards after the catch, and then opens up the field for other players. So until they get him back, this offense is in real trouble right now. And so Stroud goes 10 of 21, 86 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, runs for 19 yards. So what do you get you, about 6 fantasy points? That is a crippler. And I had him. I told people on the Start Sit show today, I was nervous about him because until they get Nico Collins back, they are going to have some struggle. So look, we love Joe Mixon. We got to talk about Joe Mixon. Sorry about that. So Joe Mixon again, last week, 2 touchdowns, 132 scrimmage yards, comes right back, another 124 scrimmage yards, 2 more rushing touchdowns. This team, the Texans, were kept in the game because Joe Mixon has been playing at a very high level. And again, he's taking, just like in Cincinnati, he gets room, but he's been more consistent for some reason. And I don't really realize what it was because he got those deep safety looks. So he had free room to run. The offensive line is better than what he had in Cincinnati. I will say that from a run block, it is a better line. It's not a great line this year. They've underperformed a bit, but so maybe that's really what it is. But Mixon is definitely found a home here. And so the games he's played, I think I think he got hurt in week 2. So week 1, and then the last 2 when he's played, he's been a dominant fantasy for us. So when he's on the field, super happy you graded. You drafted him in your draft. All right, everybody, let's talk about Locker, the new innovative fantasy app. We try to predict upcoming plays on the field. When I play blitz contests on Locker, I love that I can pay attention to game flow, player usage to make predictions about the upcoming drives. The points I get give me a chance to finish the money in the 50-50 contest on Locker. Now, Locker has a bunch of different contest structures. They're all centered on answering questions in real time about upcoming plays and drives. The more accurate you are, the more money you can win. We also have a special RotoWire Locker League you can join for $10. You can join anytime because the format's simple. You play as many Locker contests you want throughout the year. your best 10 scores are counted toward the league standing. So you can join anytime. Sign up for Locker now with the promo code WIRE, WIRE. Receive a $50 deposit match. Again, join the RotoWire Locker League. Showcase your play calling skills with real cash on the line. All right, let's go to instant reaction number 3. The Lions give the Vikings their first loss of the year. Great game for sure. And as we look at this game, first of all, it was very cool because the Lions had 2 separate 11-point leads. They blew them both, and then the Lions get the ball late. They bleed the clock, run a nice drive, kick a game-winning field goal, don't leave. They left a few seconds for the Vikings. It wasn't enough for them to do anything dangerous with that. So that was the game we had. So first of all, we see it with Detroit. Now, early in the game, David Montgomery leaves with a knee injury, and he ended up coming back. I don't know if he was a full, status at that. I don't know how his flexibility was. He ends up with 9 carries for 31 yards, 3 catches for 39. So I imagine he's fine. We'll look forward to hearing how he is after the game. But Jahmyr Gibbs breaks up a couple of monster runs, including a great 45-yard run where he just basically just that explosiveness, just hit that hole and he was just gone. Also chips in 4 for 44 as a receiver. So you get 160 scrimmage yards, a couple of touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs really gets it done. And then the only pass catcher who really did damage was Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just 8 targets, but he catches them all, goes for $112 and a touchdown. But here's the problem. Goff continues to have very low pass attempts. 25 this week, 25 last week, 18 the week prior, 23 before that. So again, he's 25 or less pass attempts in most games. And so they need to have extreme efficiency to get going. So it's a matter of who's getting the targets. Well, the biggest problem is, again, they're running the ball many weeks. Now, St. Brown has had more than 8 targets in the last 4 games. Again, it's a product of so few pass attempts. But Jameson Williams, here's the problem. Here are his targets in the last 4 games. 1 today, 4, 4, and 3. So basically, he had the 2 games, 2 for 80 and a touchdown, 3 for 76 and a touchdown. If he doesn't make that big play, this week was 1 catch, -4 yards. He also had a 1 for 9 4 weeks ago. So Jameson Williams is one of the best examples of a boom bust player because there's not volume to go around. He's clearly the second receiver in the offense, but Khalif Raymond had there was a point where it was garbage time, and then obviously the game became closer. But Raymond 3 for 39 and a touchdown, real well blocked play he got in on. But it's at a point where it was kind of like the Lions. It seemed like they felt they were in control of this game, and then they gave up a fumble 6 to Ivan Pace, so that really changed the game because they were about to just put the chokehold on him. And then, but so that's the problem with Jameson Williams. It's just not enough targets. But Sam Laporta, again, last week he had the nice 52-yard touchdown, but Laporta just not getting targets. 3 of the last 4 games, he has 1 or 2 targets. You can't live on that. As good of a player as Sam Laporta is, he's now the clear third option in an offense that wants to run the football. And their defense is playing well enough so that they're allowed to run the ball for much of the game. So you could keep starting Sam Laporta. I mean, that lucky 52-yard touchdown last week. I mean, now it's lucky. I mean, I'm glad he got it. I love Sam Laporta. But, I mean, if you only have 1 target, your odds of getting a 50-yard touchdown for a guy who's not an explosive playmaker, that's a tough sell, right? So, I don't know what his trade value is. I think the fact he's putting some yardage up, I think there's still some ability to get more than he's worth. But if you can trade him, you probably want to consider that. Maybe nobody can buy anything, pay up for him. But at this point, it's very hard to start him because the floor is super low and the ceiling is, it's not really there. So, but that said, the Lions now are tied with the Vikings at 5-1. Great division right now. That NFC North's a beautiful division to watch. And the Packers should be a game behind that, and the Bears had a bye, so we'll see they're 4-2. But that said, yeah, I mean, it's the formula. Like I said, their defense is a little better. The Hutchinson loss will cost them in some weeks. It didn't really cost them here. I thought they'd play on adrenaline for this one for Hutchinson. There's gonna be a point in time where the teams realize they can't get pressure consistently. They're gonna have to blitz and sell out, and you can get them offensively if you have a good plan for it. I think the more film that comes out with them without Hutchinson, I think teams are going to have a better plan for attacking them. And then Goff may have to throw more, and then we might see this offense the passing game pick up. So there is hope for like Laporta and maybe more for Jameson. Remember, he had a 9 and 11 target game early in the season. Minnesota, here's the one thing, and this didn't make or break them. Just why doesn't Justin Jefferson get consistent targets? Last week he had 14. He has no other game with more than 8. And I just don't get it. It's like, and Darnold again hasn't attempted a ton of passes. So it's kind of like the Detroit thing because we have Darnold with 27 attempts, 31, 28, 28. So at some point, target share gets a little on, but you think he's still getting that 10 range. It's a 30-ish% range, but I almost think you got to get Jefferson the ball because everything else opens up when he gets involved. You don't complain, but Justin Jefferson has not had a monster game this year. A 4 for 33 and a touchdown was his best game of the season, but he is not putting up those 25-point fantasy games. Those aren't. And matter of fact, I don't even think has there been a 20? He's had a couple like right at 20. And today was like 21, but that's been, and I know those are fine, but and I know you drafted Justin Jefferson, not the 101, you drafted like a 107, 106. So you got a little bit of a break there, but it's there, right? But yeah, the players who are hurting, like Jalen Naylor had a big play and Addison had a big play, but there's not much left for them. And that's the same deal. But you saw with Aaron Jones, when Aaron Jones is on the field, that offense is so much better. And we worried about Jones against this Detroit rushing defense because they're really, really good. But Jones got that one misdirection play, he got out to the left, and there was nobody on contain, and he had a long touchdown run, maybe 25-ish yards. So nice touchdown run, had a couple nice runs there. But as a receiver, 3 for 23. So he ends up 14 for 93 on the ground. He scores that early touchdown. So hopefully you start Aaron Jones. That's definitely what I'd like you to do. So, so 116 yards of the touchdown. You love that. I see I have a super chat. This is a podcast, so I'll answer it at the end as I get the podcast kind of close up. So hang with me a bit. All right. And then what else in terms? Well, we'll see when Hockenson comes back. Hockenson didn't play yet. He's got to get closer. I'm not quite sure with the low pass attempts what his real value is going to be for fantasy. I don't know how many targets he's actually going to collect here. I don't like the fact he has zero chemistry with Sam Darnold, and Darnold's going to begins to have his issues already, as his completion rate was high today, but like last week was a 14 for 31. So there's a little bit of a concern there. In terms of Hockenson, I think Hockenson, if you're rostering him, I think he's a great sell candidate when he's about to come back, because I do think there's a lot of realistic downside here. They're not passing, and Jefferson's going to get his targets. Again, it's not enough, but Addison's not going to stop being involved. And so I think that's a problem. And so I don't really think Hockenson has big upside, especially when Justin Jefferson's not putting up those massive games. So there's that. All right, let's continue on with this thing. Let's get to our instant reaction number 4. But I tell you what, I'm going to go over more of those reactions after we take a short break. All right, now we go to instant reaction number 4. Saquon Barkley dominates his former team in New York. Thing of beauty. So when we looked at this game, we kind of thought, yeah, they're going to make sure Barkley gets it. They didn't get Barkley enough, I thought. I thought, look, you rub it in? Yeah, I think you do. They had opportunities at the goal line, and they were doing multiple tush pushes with Jalen Hurts. Give the stinking ball to Barkley. Let Barkley get his 3 touchdown game. This is a big deal for him. You could tell the fans, funny enough, I know there's a lot of Philly fans in the audience, but there were New York fans cheering for him as well. I thought that was very, very cool. But Saquon had a game, 17 for $176, only to 1 touchdown, 2 catches for 11 yards. But here's the thing. They blew out the Giants so badly that Gainwell got 13 carries. Will Shipley got 8 carries. So Barkley could have easily gone for about 240 scrimmage yards in this one. And even notwithstanding, he still should have had 2 or 3 touchdowns. I just think they should have let him instead of Jalen Hurts tush pushing those in, because Barkley would have gotten those in. Anyway, neither end of that's sour grapes. But I just thought Barkley it was a story for him. You could tell the young man was really amped up to be back in that stadium. And, I guess they got him enough. Piling on, right? I'm being a jerk. Sorry. Jalen Hurts. So he only threw 14 passes. So you can't really say much there. 10 for 14, a buck 14 and touchdown. Now on the ground, he does rush for 2 touchdowns. Again, the tush pushes. And he had a run late that got a first down. But do you realize that Jalen Hurts in the last 4 games has not gone over 33 rushing yards in any game? He's not the same Jalen Hurts he was. And again, I know there's tush pushes in there. I get all that. But remember when Jalen Hurts was commonly running for 70 yards in games? Those days aren't here. He had a game early in the season, he had an 80, but those are not happening. And so it's an element out of that offense. They're without their left tackle, Jordan Mailata. It didn't hurt him here. They ended up being okay without that. I think the Giants got Kayvon Thibodeau. Maybe that helped balance that a little bit. Brian Burns was playing nicked up a little bit. But A.J. Brown, he gets 5 targets. Fortunately, he catches all of them for 89 and a touchdown because on 14 passes, usually nobody's eating. And who lost? Yeah, you guessed it. It was Devontae Smith. He caught a pass and lost 2 yards, 2 targets. So, but what do you do? 14 passes, right? So, but Philly, look, I don't know if Nick Sirianni, the head coach, is causing problems for Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. This doesn't look like Kellen Moore offense. Kellen Moore's offense predicates on a downfield passing attack, open stuff up underneath. I think Sirianni is gotten in to Kellen Moore's ear, and I think he's telling him to do something. That's my guess, because this is not a Kellen Moore offense. And the Kellen Moore offense would help Jalen Hurts, because Hurts can throw deep. And then if it opens up underneath, it would give him an opportunity for better sight lines. It's just really not, it's really a problem. And again, they won and they were fine. But Philadelphia, this still looks like a dysfunctional offense in a lot of ways. Again, how do you argue when they steamroll? But again, it was the Giants. And when the Giants don't get their pass rush home, they're not a good defense. And even with a depleted line with no Jordan Mailata, that pass rush was not going to overtake the Philly line to that extent. So Dallas Goedert misses this one, which 14 pass attempts probably better off anyway. And other side, look, I'm not going to say much about the Giants here. The one thing I will say is this, though. I caution people about starting Tyrone Tracy this week and Devin Singletary. I said, first of all, Philly's a good run defense. They face some real easy run defense. The other thing was, I figure they're going to split time. And now you have a tougher run defense and you're splitting time. And man, it didn't work. They both had about the same work. Singletary, 5 for 18 and a 3-yard catch. Tracy, 6 for 23 and 3 catches for 9 yards. So Tracy gets you 32 yards and 3, so 6.2 PPR points. Not good. Now, Malik Neighbors, not his fault. First half, he got all his production. 8 targets, 4 for 41. Didn't get a target in the second half. Philly was bringing pressure. Philly got a lead, and that's a problem. When you get a lead on a team like the Giants, and Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, is out for the season, it was going to be felt. When a team knows they're facing them and you can get after them, that's a real problem. And so they did. They got after him hard. And Daniel Jones ended up not finishing the game because it was a blowout. I don't think they pulled him for production. I think they pulled him because it was a blowout. So there's that. Wan'Dale Robinson gets a 6 for 23. So if you use him at PPR, again, you got a floor game and you're happy with that. Let's do one more reaction here. Let's do Amari Cooper. So instant reaction number 6. Amari Cooper makes his Bills debut. So in this one, Amari Cooper didn't see much action in the first half, but he ends up with 5 targets in the game, 4 for 66 and a touchdown. They put him in the slot on his 1 touchdown, just made a real nice in look, and Josh Allen just drilled a perfect strike. Very, very nice, very well designed. But here's what we were talking about. Super small sample size, and the Titans, defensively could take them or leave them. But I was worried going into the season. And if you're listening to me, you heard me say this. I was worried because without Cooper, they had no receivers that would scare a defense. And I knew that teams were just going to load up the intermediate area, tighten the windows on Josh Allen, spy him as a runner a bit, and they had nobody to consistently win deep. And I think that manifested itself. I think that was a problem. Cooper on the field, just his presence on the field, defense got to view him differently. You can no longer say, all right, we're packing everybody in. Because if you go with single coverage and Amari Cooper, you don't have to know the routes. You just go deep. And Josh Allen's going to buy a little time. He's going to find you. So I think it opened it up for everybody. Khalil Shakir has had good games with or without him, but a 7 for 65 catches all 7 targets. Keon Coleman 4 for $125. It just lets the passing game breathe. So I think Amari Cooper is going to be part of the solution. Again, I know they played the Titans and they were losing early on in this game. It may have been even halftime, and then they poured it on and blew them away. But I do want you to understand that Amari Cooper is going to be more involved each week. Josh Allen is one of the highest level quarterbacks. He has a great downfield arm, and Amari can get down there too. I do think they're going to throw enough. That defense will give up points. I think Amari Cooper is going to be a strong fantasy finish, but I think he's going to rise many ships. Now, James Cook didn't have the great game, 12 for 32, but he found the end zone. So he got you 9.2 points, no catches. Ray Davis, don't make the mistake of thinking he had a great game, 5 for 41 and a touchdown. It all came when the game was out of hand. It was basically Ty Johnson was the backup like it had been. Dave was going to get a couple snaps, and that was it. But when the game was in question, it was literally James Cook. Dalton Kincaid, 3 for 52. I wonder if he's still just going to be a low ceiling guy getting some target. He had 6 targets. That was good. Targets were spread out between the 4 top receivers. So that was a good thing. I think that was a very good thing. But again, I think Cooper's going to be much more involved as we go. Hey, RotoWire covers all the fantasy sports. You get a free 2-day trial, no credit card needed. Head on over to rotowire.com/pod. And let me answer this one super chat question, and then we're going to get to the night game. All right, Tyler, what you do with Reed now that the Friar Dobbs is the Packers? All right. Yeah, I know. I don't understand what happened to Reed. I talked about that game, and this should have been a perfect game plan. 2 outside linebackers out, a free safety out. This is a game where you really would have set it up for Reed in the middle of the field. And now Dobbs only had 4 targets last week. He had the 10 targets this week. So it may have been a function. I mean, I got to rewatch. I'm watching all these games at one time. There's too much going on. I have to see, because remember, it was Christian Watson didn't do anything. And if it ended up being Stingley mostly on Watson and it was a backup corner on Dobbs, I think you're going to make that call to go there as often as possible. So I got to rewatch the tape on that. Reed's a superstar, and they're going to have to figure some things out, because it's very frustrating to see how the usage with Reed has been. And I'm going to look back to the targets, but last week, 6 targets, the prior week, 6 targets. He had an 8 and a 6. So it's been 6 targets or less in 4 of the last 5. And realistically, you're right. Fantasy wise, it's very hard to get great production when you are so limited by volume. So the frustration's there. I think you have to keep starting Reed, because you know that in 6 touches, he can put up 100 yards and a couple touchdowns, but it's going to be riding through a storm. I think right now, and I got to lower his ranking in my rest of the season, I think you treat him as a borderline wide receiver 2-3, boom bust. I think you have to consider him that. But if they figure something out, which they can, but they do tend to spread the ball, and that is a problem. So, Tyler, great question. I wish I had a better answer, but it's a Matt LaFleur thing. Hey, thanks to our sponsor, Locker. Sign up for Locker now with the promo code WIRE and receive a $50 deposit match. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.